Hi guys, how's the audio? Check 1 2, check check. Can you hear me now? Jimmy, you can hear me out there? Jimmy Hayes. I see Dan Elliott. Steve Jovag. Chief Johnny Johnson says, act now. I see Bryce Robertson out there. He's up way up north, further north than I am presently. It's good to see that Ron survived the night, Ron Shaw. Ron Shaw is the curator of Boogeyman Land. It's a very terrifying place up there, and he had a real busy night last night, so glad to hear he's okay. His neighbors called him at 3 in the morning and asked him if he was filming a werewolf movie. It's tough up there. This is not Folgers, Natty Ice. Hello, Monica Frank Rollins, Linda, Anthony Ramirez is out there. You guys made it home safely. We had a small family reunion today. Donald Rutledge better have lots of silver bullets. I think silver and copper, upright walking canids and or werewolves probably have a really severe allergy to those alloys. That's my opinion. I'm thinking especially copper. I think copper is probably going to have a better effect over silver. So anyway, I just kind of popped on. Some folks wanted me to do some questions and answers. So I'm wide open for questions. I might not have all the answers, but I'm wide open for any questions. We've gotten a lot of interesting photos lately too. The supposed Russian Yeti, that little poor little gaboon or whatever kind of monkey they put in a fursuit or a nasty black wig or whatever. That's poor thing. Poor thing. I think too, you see the black fingernails and you think it's the hand of this little creature. it's somebody else's hand with the black Lee press-on nails that he's holding while he's talking this gibberish to the poor little monkey. How'd you do on the range, Donald? So I gave my grandson a choice. He can go fishing tomorrow or go out to the range, and it looks like the range is going to win again. It's nice when these kids put down their video games and pick up a rifle or a pistol. You get some skills. Hello, Tina. Haven't talked to you in a long time. Linda, when did you see your upright canid in Southwest Florida? You know, what's going on in Chicago right now is crazy. I mean, Lon Strickler's getting all these reports of the flying phantoms, the giant bats, whatever it is going on there. And I think it's harbinger something. There's a major event going to happen, and these entities like to hang around and feed off of tragedy. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just my feeling, is there's something major getting into play and into place with what's going on in Chicago. Yes, Jeff, actually we don't do black-eyed kid research. It was a situation where the ultra-terrestrial investigation we did over by Gallup, where the family was pretty much trapped in their Hogan while a craft was above them, and a bunch of little gray aliens got off, ran down off the Hogan, ran all over the property. We still found some prints off in the woods, even getting there a couple weeks after the incident. And I was there with Jack Carey for the second visit, the follow-up visit, and the family had reported hearing miniguns, all kinds of guns, maybe something that even sounded like an A-10, the big gun on an A-10, before the craft came over their Hogan. And we're trying to see if there was an aerial engagement or perhaps a ground engagement, how they engaged these craft. And it was out doing a perimeter of this property when we saw from a distance she had a kind of a shapely figure to her. And as we got closer, this young woman was dressed in this filthy one-piece denim getup, and she was wearing 6-inch cork heels and not walking on the road, but walking through the tumbleweeds. And so, you know, we rolled up on her thinking that this person is out of place, doesn't belong out here in the middle of the desert next to the railroad tracks. So we rolled up on her to ask her if she needed some help. And I rolled down the window, and once I made eye contact with her, that's all I remember till Jack started slapping me around and broke the gaze with her. But she had black eyes. And I know you can buy contacts and put on black contacts, but I just find it very strange, you know, somebody out in the middle of nowhere would go to the trouble of being out in the middle of nowhere in a filthy denim one-piece getup with black contacts on. And, you know, had it just been a thing where, oh, gee, that was weird. But no, there was physical things happen to us. She raised my body temperature probably up to about 106, 107 degrees. The water poured off my face, just the water poured off me. It wasn't sweat, it was something more than sweat. And Jack Carey became immediately ill, and he was going to stain the upholstery and do some projectile vomiting. I mean, it hit us that quick and that fast. And we told our drivers to get us out of there. So it wasn't something I really looked into or really wanted to be a part of until it happened to us. And totally, you know, there's those who don't like me using the words demonic, but in my experience, this is a demonic entity. And this poor woman probably is somebody's daughter. Uh, she could be a mother. She could be so many things, but she's got all this garbage that's controlling her, and it shows externally, and that's very unfortunate. But the way she took me in and took my mind, I could imagine some poor sheep herder finding her out there. And that's the thing about the black-eyed children and black-eyed situations where we have people, is they put themselves in helpless situations, so we'll feel sorry for them and try to help them. And often that'll involve an invitation. What I asked the black-eyed lady is, can we get you some water? Do you need a ride? This, that, or otherwise. And I didn't even hear what she said, but Jack heard what she said. She said, I have everything that I need. And that's when I caught the gaze and she had me. And it was interesting too, because I know that area like the back of my hand. And the next day, I knew the town that we were near, but I didn't know where we were physically, how the ins and ends of getting there. So I had to actually go into a convenience store and look at a map. That's how fried my brain got from that situation. Jack Carey, Mike. Michael Aguilar. Jack Carey is in Oklahoma presently if you want to contact him, if you have anything interesting to look into. He's got a case that he's working on, and he's got a headstone, a picture of it. And I believe this person died in 1917, but on the headstone it reads, killed by human wolves. And as you dig a little deeper into this story, it's pretty interesting. So Jack's working on that right now in a historical retrospect of what happened in this small community. But there was some type of practicing people and talking with other folks, even around Land Between the Lakes, the Beast of LBL and all that, you know, it's been hyped up and everything. But yeah, I think even Jody Cook, people were talking to him saying there were some practicing families that were doing the shifting and were involved in this. And I'm not entirely sure what we're dealing with up north. It's a generational issue where even Ron Shaw's grandparents had run-ins with dog-like entities, upright walking canines, and it's continuing. We assume that the individuals that we're dealing with now are siblings, grandchildren, perhaps, from the original upright canid female that they call an unpleasant term, but we don't know. I mean, we can just assume, but to see a 9-foot tall dog looking thing standing up with hands is just not something anybody's wired to see. Interesting too is we had done a river trip with Mike McDaniel and his friend. It was just the three of us, and it was about mid-spring, and there's still quite a bit of runoff coming out of the southern Rockies into the San Juan. And there is something that occurs on the San Juan that only happens on the Yangtze River in China, and it's called sand waves. And it's a situation where the sediment and sand build up underneath the water to a point that it makes the water crest, and the waves actually roll back at you. And overnight, a big sand wave had built up over this like class 1 or 2 rapid. So we had enough room to have a wide berth because it's 6-7 foot waves, and it was only us down there in 2 boats. So we didn't go play. We all pushed off, got to calmer part of the river, and as we backed away from the sand waves, we looked up on the ridge And there was this, for all intents and purposes, it was dog legs, muscular up here, and on all fours, looking at us. And it had every appearance of a wolf, except the ears were a little bit longer. And it was pushing 800 pounds. You know, it was a small burro, a big donkey looking size. And we all saw it, and then periodically we'd look back up the river on the rest of our journey, and it would be up on a ridge. Sometimes it got fairly close into us. We got down to the flatter part of the river where there aren't as many canyons. And normally, River Right, I walk people up to this ancient Anasazi ruin that you can only get to from the river. Instead, we went river left to an open area, and we hunkered down in the bushes. We just wanted to get a picture of this thing. If it came out, broke through the brush, and we'd get a picture, and it never came out. And Theo Harris, I didn't get to see the episode on Skinwalker Canyon, but you know, you can go back through our photo archives just on my Facebook, and we spent quite a bit of time in that canyon several years ago. In fact, we filmed the pilot for what became Haunted Highways. It was going to be Paranormal Highways, but we filmed the pilot there, and the whole crew was terrified. It was great too. Dustin Perry, I guess he was with Ghost Hunters International. Super nice guy. And we filmed the pilot out there in that canyon. So I haven't got a chance to see it yet. John Lee, we're doing concealed carry courses and advanced carry courses, and just overall firearms training for folks. We go down into Minneapolis and St. Paul. We do classes down there. Got a lot of millennials and I guess yuppies wanting to arm up because their $200,000 and $300,000 homes aren't in such nice neighborhoods anymore, and a lot of folks down there are having a lot of bad things happen. Yeah, Cleta, have you seen that headstone? It's in Canova. Jimmy Moore, that's an interesting question too. My friend George Knapp, you'll hear him on Coast to Coast, and he's got does broadcast news out of Las Vegas. Super great guy. He spent some time out there, and then he worked on the book Hunt the Skinwalker. And one of the weirder things out of the book, and a lot of the weird stuff never made it into the book, never got into the book. But one of the weird things is they saw a werewolf wearing a plaid shirt, smoking a cigarette. Okay, and that's, people want umbrella descriptions that they can, tuck away in the back of their mind. And when you say an upright walking canid, you've got 20 different possibilities at any given time, what it could be and what the origins are. Hey, David, how you doing? David Epley, long time no see. Vampires is something I don't know. Once again, I think a lot of these things have origins in some type of factual data going back eons ago. I mean, there's definitely something going on with that. And, when we go back to all the genetic manipulation that went on before the flood, and we can read further about this in the book of Enoch, the book of Yashar, the book of Jubilees, and now out of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're finally getting into the book of Giants and sharing a little bit with us. And it's unfortunate that a lot of that information is so controlled that we can't just go grab the book of Giants and pick through it. But I mean, we do have a situation on this planet where we were cannon fodder, pleasure, slaves for some time when these genetic manipulations pretty well took over this planet. And the flood wiped them up, but we've got remnants of them, and they've got remnants of them after the flood, and they're here with us now, offshoots and offscours of them. Essentially feral peoples. And who knows how their DNA works after so many generations. It's hard to explain. Felicia, Frank, John, say hi to my grandma and grandpa out there. Tell them I love them. Used to have so much fun down there. I remember one time Felicia's grandparents, I'd been gone for a week or so, and I came back, and they were all sad. And I go, what's going on? And they've got just like a little 2-acre cornfield. And something came through the night before and took every ear of corn. Walked through and swiped it all. They didn't hear anything. Got a pretty good idea who did that or what did that. And Julie, did you ever follow up on the lizard creature in the Four Corners area? We've got probably 10 undocumented type lizard entities out there. The one with the shroud is still being seen from time to time, and I still get emails and folks who are seeing them. They run on 2 legs. They're very aggressive. They probably bite you. They chase people on motorcycles. They chase people on horseback. And they're not mountain boomers. They're something else. Bill Brock, Betty and Barney Hill, I buy it. Absolutely. I buy it. And, you got to imagine the way things were back at the time this abduction happened. We had a white woman and a black man. So, they may well have been targeted for whatever purpose or whatever reason. And a very horrific encounter. If you folks haven't read up on the Betty and Barney Hill case, you need to. I believe late 50s, early 60s, an abduction. Very well documented on behalf of them. I think they even probably did a TV movie about it later. But terrible stuff. Terrible stuff. Hello, Thorn Wolf. I was checking out your new band. I like him. Said the Liar. Pretty cool. That's it. I get often asked, Robert Snavely, in all of your encounters, what would you consider the most scariest you ever had? And there's been so many things. If you're going to go out with us, you probably should wear adult depends. The shock of things, when you first see something we're not supposed to see, I think it isn't the scary part of it, it's the shock of it, and then your brain trying to register what it is you're seeing that you're not supposed to be seeing, that isn't there, it doesn't exist. We see monkeys in the zoo and bears and things like that, and we're all good with that. We process that well. When you see something that shouldn't exist, and you see it for the first time. I think that's not scary, but what's frightening is your reaction. Early on, some of the things that were happening to me up on the Mogollon Rim, I wanted to file away and explain them away as something else, and I couldn't, because I couldn't process it. Hello, Daniel Bingman. How are you, brother? Alan Mercer. How are we doing, Sue? Robert, are you going to contact George Knapp, or who are you going to contact if they come back? Ronnie Montesi, a lot of the stuff goes back to genetic manipulation from a very, very long time ago, and I unfortunately, I think the DNA involved that can probably cross up with some other stuff. And I've probably categorized a few situations where I probably had an upright walking feline entity, and I filed it away as something else. But now, thinking back, I've run into upright walking felines, cats, big flat faces, cat fur around the mouth and stuff. Hello, Tasha. You're at a metal concert, huh? Hey, Ricky Seymour, Greeley, Colorado. And that's the thing too. And I work with people from aerospace. I work with folks who've been involved in the NASA, if you will, and folks involved in aerospace and so forth. And they've come to a lot of different conclusions. When you talk about the gray aliens, in my opinion, oh, hello, Lorena Olson. You guys driving on the road? Good deal. Be safe. Most of them come back to me, and I've got the same opinion too. I think your gray aliens are a bioengineered meat puppet, and they've probably got about the program of a 286 computer, and if you take them outside of their program, they don't respond well. And I think that's why so many of them have been dispatched and killed and beat down and beat up and killed with samurai swords and everything else. They don't respond well outside of their program, and I think they're probably fairly expendable, and they're programmed to probably do some dirty work. David B. Hall, you did your 9th grade science project on Barney and Betty Hill. Yes. Hello, Ronald Bailey from Fort Collins. Donald Rutledge. I worked, unfortunately, up in Dulce a few times, and that's supposedly an deep underground military base there. But you hang around up there, somebody's going to hit you with a neurotoxin. So it's probably not a good place to hang around, especially if you're looking for something or looking into something. Really don't know what's going on there. Norio Hayakawa has pretty well debunked Phil Schneider, and Phil Schneider had some issues. Phil Schneider was never in the military, never in the Navy, never in these black book projects or anything like that. The guy had some issues. He was an excellent public speaker on the stories he made up. I think that's about it. Sean, I'm up near Canada. We do have some folks still down in the Four Corners area if you need something looked into. The frog people in the South American jungles, there's so much stuff going on out there. I remember there was a local lake outside of Farmington, and I was talking with a family. They were out there fishing, and they saw something swim under their boat. And the guy looked and he goes, "Is that a scuba diver?" So they kind of followed alongside of it. It wasn't a scuba diver. It was a dude with a fin, and he was swimming like friggin' Aquaman. Yep. They're pretty sure it was a male. And they followed him across the lake. And when they lost him, their little outboard couldn't follow him. The fresh water channel that comes into this lake comes in from the San Juan, and it's probably like 1600 CFS coming in. And they couldn't follow him up that fresh water channel, but Aquaman swam right up in there. And they told me they were probably doing maybe 10, 12 miles per hour with their outboard following this thing. That's pretty fast for someone in scuba equipment to swim. That's pretty quick. But Daniel, your landlord is a lizard. I think she's a reptilian. I think so. At least you're getting a new roof, right? Hello, Mark. Hello, Ruth Stansfield from Aussie. All right. So Kid Yowie is researching down there. Haven't really fronted him on Facebook yet, but he's been sending me a lot of different photos of his research, and very interesting. And he lives back near the Blue Mountains, and he's always feeding all the flora and fauna of Australia. It's kind of interesting. He shares those photos and videos with me. Keith Short, once again, the underground base at Dulce, New Mexico. Here's Norio Hayakawa's concern, is we once had probably 4,000 people in that community just a few years ago, and now it's down around 1,800 people. If we could get local statistics from clinics or off-site hospitals where people show up for care, they probably have 10 times the national average of cancer, 10 times the national average of leukemia. Is that correlated in with Project Gas Buggy back in 1968? They detonated an underground nuke not far from Dulce, supposedly to loosen up the gas pockets. I think in the end it probably poisoned the ground table water with nuke stuff, unfortunately. And I was at the Aztec UFO Symposium in 2009, and Norio Hayakawa said that perhaps what's going on up there is actually just an underground nuclear waste storage facility for Los Alamos Labs. Now, you couldn't have anything like that anywhere in these United States because of regulations and protections, but a separate sovereign nation could sign off on it and let you store your stuff there. That might be what's going on there. I don't know. Makes sense. But the folks are dying up there, and the folks are getting cancers and leukemias and weird stuff left and right. And if their tribe signed off on having a nuclear waste storage facility up there, that's going to be on their heads because it's killing the folks. Okay, good. You're talking about George Knapp, Robert? Good deal. Karen Lee Howland, Boise, Idaho. Hello, big dog. Eileen Garreau, how are you? Long time no see, lady. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. Do you still regress people that have had abductions? I've been wanting to ask you. Or if you could point us to someone who does. It's a video on YouTube, the ultra-terrestrial investigation, and working with Bradford. Even if 2 weeks after what happened to them, he had marks all up his arm, up into his shoulder that he couldn't explain, and then he went from the Hogan. They went from the Hogan over to the main house, and he had a AK-47. He said it became so hot in his hands he couldn't hold it, and he set it on the floor. And then we've got lost time after that. The whole family does. Be careful with Sci-Fi and Discovery Channel, because Sci-Fi is doing mockumentaries and they're hiring actors to play professors and biologists and zoologists, and people were buying it hook, line, and sinker. The aquatic ape theory. Oh my goodness, that's reaching. But the way they present it, much the way a lot of modern science presents things and sucks us into it without any factual data, it's so easy to do. It's so easy to get sucked into this stuff unless you know better. That's some interesting caves you found out there, Mark Para. Very interesting. Got some stuff going on out there. Chandra Caudill, here's the deal. I've got a lady in South Carolina I've been conversing with, and they have some type of entity harassing them that is an upright walking canid, that she's brought medicine people in of local tribes and so forth, and they're even telling them it's a local practicing family. The Skinwalker genre isn't simply applied to the Navajo people. It seems to be crossing over into everything, or at least we're becoming aware that there's a lot more different tribal entities and Caucasian people doing this practice to shapeshift. Hey, watching us from the White Mountains, Josephine. Yeah, Donald Rutledge, our friend from Texas, worked around radioactive materials in the military, ended up getting cancer, and he was the only one in the family that got it. Yeah, David, don't you have a plaque up of me in your Sasquatch museum? I should have sent you a hat or a vest or something too. we got to be careful because they're getting stuff from us and selling it on eBay. I didn't know that. So careful what you send to people. Hello, Mark Curtis. Long time no see, brother. The Look at You guys miss you. I'm sure they do. We had a great time up there. Be right back. Anybody else need a beer? Okay. Speaking of underground bases, even up on the Lukachukai Valley, we've talked to people who live down in the valley, and they saw transports, semi-rigs, Humvees, all kinds of stuff heading toward the mountain, one way, across the desert. The next day they go out, the tracks are there and everything, and there's no return on the vehicles, so they went into the mountain somehow, somewhere. And there's parts of the Lukachukai you can actually hear a mechanical sound underneath the ground. And then there's a particular canyon there where the rocks match the flora and fauna, but you know they're manufactured, they're not real. And whether they be air vents or an observation post of view, but they're not natural. So that's a worry up there sometimes. Alex, I missed your Travel Channel show. Get me a link to that. I want to check it out. And I know MK Davis was doing something, I think, similar on the Travel Channel. Well, thank you, David. It's nice to be on the Wall of Fame or the Wall of Shame. Yeah, Gail J. Betty, you've got some interesting prints and stuff going on out in your neck of the woods. Julie Hagen, you remember the photo from South America? And I think they were working a wreck into the water, and there's a picture of, the emergency personnel doing something, but behind the emergency personnel, back in the bushes, it's a frog dude. No ifs, ands, or buts. He's a huge guy. That was really interesting. I don't think it was Photoshop either. Yeah, there's been a peak in Thunderbird slash pterodactyl pterosaur sightings, winged hominid sightings, and so forth. I'll share something with you guys. Probably haven't talked about, but one of the families that I work with up by the Chuska, they like to go out and collect antler shards, sheds, and so forth. And one of the guys I'm working with, he said he saw this freshly dug hole in the side of a hill. And he thought that was interesting. What's going on? Is a bear, making a burrow here for the winter or whatever? And it was quite a ways up this hill. So he's on this other mesa. So he's sitting down and he's getting a better look at it. Got the binoculars out. Something steps out of the back of the hole and stands on the ledge in front of the cave. And you can see through it, the fur, He said it was like pig hair, and he could see the skin underneath. And I said, what did it look like? He said, this is cliche, but he said, the cartoon character from Beauty and the Beast. He said, that was what the face looked like. And I go, okay, wow. He said, this is when it gets really weird. Out came a set of wings, and he jumped off the ledge, flew down past me down into the canyon, and he had a tail. There were more winged hominid sightings up in that area, and I guess at one time the Navajo Rangers went and responded to a lady who had a sheep camp, and she ended up moving her sheep camp off the mountain. She was so terrified by it, and the Rangers saw this winged hominid flying around broad daylight. And then later we've got somebody in Newcomb, I believe he was the janitor, the Newcomb Auditorium at the high school. He, closed up after a function, basketball game or something. And as he walked out to his vehicle in the parking lot, something swooped down and grabbed him and picked him up and was carrying him away. And thankfully, it only had him by his jean jacket, and it ripped through his jean jacket, and he was able to fall down back to earth and got away. So lots of weird stuff going on up there. The winged creatures it's a frightening thing because they can come out of nowhere and silently. Hi, Cleta. Tell your granddaughter I said hi. And tell your son to get out there and catch the freshwater octopus for us in Oklahoma. Oh, thanks, Alex. That's the link? Cool, I'm going to check that out. This goes way back to up here in northern Minnesota. I was 17, and there's a family up here back when I was 17. Twin brothers married twin sisters. They had beautiful children. And I took two of these girls from the family to the movies. I thought it was hot stuff. Had a double date from this family to the movies, and a complete gentleman, of course. And we watched the movie and brought them home. They lived way back in the country on a country road. And my Uncle Tom's Ford, at the time, was a nice lifted 4x4, 5-speed. Pretty much brand new. This is probably 81, 82, 1981, 82. And I was coming back on the country road, and at that time, there were a lot of inebriates around. A lot of drunk folks out in the woods. It's the culture. And I roll up, and this figure steps onto the road. It's kind of shuffling across the road. And I thought, oh, a little old drunk man. All right, I'll slow down, turn the brights off, just put the regular lights on him, and I'm rolling up on him. So I might as well, shine him a path across the road. And he's shuffling across the road. And I thought it was like a little old man with his head down, wearing a trench coat. Wouldn't think anything of it much other than, I'll just make sure this guy gets across the road so I don't run him over. And I started looking around, and, he's probably 20, 30 feet in front of me. And off to the left where he's heading, there's a culvert, and at least a 9 or 10-foot drop. And I'm thinking, this poor old guy's out here drunk, and he's going to fall off this culvert and die in front of me. And, so I'm rolling down the window, and he's getting right up to the edge of the road. And I'm like, hey, there's a culvert. You're going to fall. And just as I said that, he jumped off the culvert, and out came wings. Off he went. 17 years old. I'm not wired for that. So I get on. My cousin Lisa to this day says, your eyes were this big. He would blah, 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 blah. But that was freaky. So it was a bat. The morphology of a bat for all intents and purposes. So 17 years old up here, that happened here. And the dude was 5.5 feet tall. The bat, 5.5 feet tall. Alex, what's going on? You're getting winged creatures. The cabin, is that the same cabin we know about? Okay. Huh. Derek H. Jones, are dragons real? We have relic reptiles. I can't explain it. I can see how probably the smaller ones, like the ones on the Animas River Valley, San Juan River Valley, those areas, the ones that call the mini T-Rexes that are 3 to 5 feet tall, I can see how they can work in and out of the mix and, not have a lot of sightings. And they work in packs, a lot like possibly a velociraptor, but quite a few sightings. I've talked to a lot of people who've seen them. It's really interesting. And we've seen their tracks and we've heard them. And they scream. It's not pleasant. We had 3 of them triangulate on a river camp we had one night. Yeah, god awful reptilian screams. Not cool. But I think they're natural. I think it's something natural that is something that's just out there that's natural. Just we haven't brought one in yet. No one's brought one in yet. If they have, it hasn't made it to a local news station. I would recommend anything weird you ever catch, capture, or kill, drive right down to the news station and have them start filming it because they're going to take it away from you. Okay, that's where you got the toenail. I got you, Alex. Okay. Once again, the gargoyles. Derek H. Jones, once again. That's another video available on YouTube, and then Monsters and Mysteries in America. They expounded on it a little bit further, and there's another program that's going to visit that same situation. But we're kind of stumped. And this family out there, they live along the river. And they've had their share of encounters with the furry folks that live all along the river. I mean, from the track record, this is amazing. From the track record, over the years I was there and studying the different tracks and watching different family units and the youngsters as they matured and their feet got bigger, but we still had things where we could kind of tell who was this and that and otherwise. And then a family that disappeared for a few years shows up again, and they've all grown up. It's interesting. But from Farmington down to probably Aneth, Utah, there's 35 different individuals just from our track record over the years, from Farmington, New Mexico to Aneth, Utah, that work the river system. But going back to the Night Stalker, the gargoyle, and that's the thing is, I'd interviewed one of the young men who had seen something up on top of a telephone pole, and he didn't interview well, and we weren't getting any real dimensions because he was talking about how big just the one wing when it flopped out was, and he didn't interview well, so I just let that go, and they even tried to Monsters and Mysteries wanted to interview him too, and once again he didn't interview well. And but the wingspan of the creature had to be 16 or 18 feet. That was on top of the telephone pole. But for all intents and purposes, in the end, what he did make very clear is that the face and the body looked like the thing from Jeepers Creepers. So we're looking at the corn knocked down in 3 and 4 directions out in the field, and we're just trying to figure out what happened here. How did the corn just go? So we got Chief Dan out there, our Navajo elder and tracker. He says they're flying in off the mesas and dropping in here in the cornfield. They're gliders. They're not very graceful. And he said they just plop in. That's how they land. And he said most of them probably can't just run and free fly. They have to get up to a higher place, catch a thermal, or and then they can float around for a while or glide around for a while. But he tracked them out of the field. There was 2 little ones that stayed pretty much at the edge of the field, and then the big one was coming up to the family's home and harassing them, and left these 3-clawed, weird-looking tracks. Yes, Pamela's still up in Minnesota. That's interesting too, because Alex Hearn, some years ago, joined me on a San Juan River trip, and we had stuff crossing the river all night. Stuff was going on. So the next day, I scoured the area, no tracks, no prints, and I'm making coffee, and Alex and I are sitting there, and the river's right here. We're right here on a river bank. The river's right there. And I look down, and here's this beautiful 18-inch print, Sasquatch, for all intents and purposes. Beautiful, perfect. Look at that. How did I miss that? So we're getting cameras, and as I'm taking a picture, and Alex takes a picture, what was in the print steps out of it, and it fills in with sand and water and mud. Freaky deaky. Yeah, the whole trip was wild, and I'll tell the story, and I will tell you that Alex and I did not do acid hits before this trip. But the first day we had a lot of wind, so we camped short. We just made a few miles down, but we had good water. There's no reason we shouldn't have, made I think another 12, 15 miles the next day. Shouldn't have been a problem. But things got weird. We kept passing through the sand canyon like in a loop, again and again and again. And there was purple-hued skies, pink-hued skies, just weird. And then it was like we were getting to the scene before the scene was ready for us. And things would speed up, things would slow down. And, Alex Hearn is just, we're all after it. We've got to get off this river, and we've got to get out of this, whatever's going on. And, sometimes I go, hurry up, Alex, it'll be all right. Come faster. And things would slow down and warp. Like I said, I've never done acid, but like an acid trip. The only thing that could see us was a wild herd of llamas who kept coming down. And there's wild llamas on the reservation that, like, hey, this sheep herding gig's not working out, but let's get together and pretend we're in the Andes, And they would come down to the shore, and they looked concerned. If you've ever seen a concerned llama, I know what they look like. But they kept coming down. It was the same scene repeated over and over again, and the llamas would come down. And crazy, crazy stuff. And Alex and I were just paddling. Chief Dan was upriver, and he saw the cloud, perfectly sunny day. He saw the cloud and the mist, and he knew if we were in it, we were in trouble. And they were going upriver as far as they could on 2-track roads and getting up on mesas and trying to see us, and they couldn't see us because we were in the mist. And I think Chief Dan was kind of, I know John Lee was waiting for us and some other guys. I think Chief Dan, and he was trying to probably break it to him that they were never going to see us again because we were in this other place. And I've often been told if something gets weird on the river, if the sky gets wrong, gets weird, you're going into some kind of portal or something, and you need to paddle back upstream. If you can't make it for the current, try to get on shore, get up over the mesas, get out of there. But somehow we just ended up in this whatever. And well, we should have been off the water at 4, maybe 5 at the latest. It was 9, I think after 9 when we finally rolled in. And here's what happens. It was daylight where we were, and then there was this pop. And it was dark. And it was cold. But I recognized where we were on the river. And I realized we had like a mile to go, and we got out of there. But totally bizarre. So was I in a vortex? Were me and Alex in a vortex? Maybe. I don't know. I can't explain it otherwise. And I think a lot of folks that get in those never get back out. Another thing on the river too, I'll tell this story too, since we're talking about the San Juan. Down there with my river partner, Shut, and I think we had my grandson's dad was down with us, Big Red, and just a small trip just to get out, do it, 2-3 days down the river, and it's an area we call border camp, and it kind of borders on the Ute Reservation where we're not supposed to be, but we were there. It's a nice, great big huge cottonwood, lots of shade. It gets up in the hundreds down there. And we put in and we're set up for camp. Probably about 2 in the morning. Thought I was dreaming, or I didn't know. Somebody's outside my tent. This is the middle of nowhere. There's no way to get back there. Pretty much, I suppose you could walk in or take a trail or something, but there was people outside my tent. And I could hear a lot of voices, and I unzip my tent, and there's a line of people, and the guy is dressed like 1850s wagon master kind of. And that's who he was. He was the wagon master. But there weren't no wagons. They were all on foot. And I'm looking down a line of people there. And I can see there's a big sliver of moon going on. And I've got period clothing up to like the 1960s. There's a dude in a biker jacket, Levi's, little biker chick with him, 1950s looking, and the period clothes I was recognizing on these different people, and there must have been 20 of them. I think I'm dreaming this, right? Okay. And the wagon master introduces himself. I can't remember his name, and he says, "We're looking to get out of here. Do you have any idea how we get out of here?" I go, "Well, we're gonna go down the river tomorrow, another 20 miles or whatever, and then we're going to get off this river, and that's how we get out." I said, I sure wouldn't want to try to hike out of some of these canyons. I don't think you can carry enough water with you to get out. I mean, the best way is to go down river, but there's mesas and cliffs and mountains, and I don't know. And then I heard my buddy Shut, river part. I heard him roll around his tent and mumble a little bit. I said, "Why don't you go ask him?" And so they went up to his tent, and I laid there, and I thought I was dreaming, so I just went back to sleep. Next morning, I said, "I had the weirdest dream last night." And he said it wasn't a dream. He said I talked to him. He described the wagon master. He described all the period dressed people, the 1950s biker jacket dude with the chick. They were alive physically, but they couldn't get out. I can't explain it. And they're alive from different time periods. And I guess they're trapped in this thing. I don't know. I can't explain it, but he described it in so much detail that I don't think there's any way we both could have had the same dream. Um, and there was tons of prints in the sand, but nothing like super discernible, like a kid's sneaker print or whatever. The San Juan River sand's pretty sloshy. So, I mean, but it looked like 20 people came through. I don't know. How we doing, Leroy Johnson? Jane, I'm bartending too. I bought everybody a beer. Jane Maya Rodriguez. Yeah, we can say shit magnets on Facebook, right? Yeah. Well, when Jane was here, the first trip she did up here, we wanted to do this 2 or 3 day, 3 day river trip with her, and it was just too cold. Ron and I decided not to do the river trip and just go up to Boogeyman Land, and that's where we had all this stuff happen. And Jane was there firsthand to. She got to see a Sasquatch, and unfortunately, she got to see an upright walking canyon about 8 or 9 feet tall, not far from the vehicle they were traveling in. But anyway, we wanted that river trip, so we got it this time. Now the water was low, and we ended up at this camp about 12 miles, 12 or 14 miles down. And my youngest daughter wanted to see her brother John because he's shipping back out to the Middle East sometime soon. So it worked out nice because she could get to this camp with a car and come down and see us. So it worked out nicely. But while we were there, the furry folks came in. It was interesting. And there was this fella camped not far from us, and he came over and introduced himself. Very, very nice fellow. And then this 1,000-pound owl starts, and then it ends up in the monkey house at the San Diego Zoo, gibberish, and went on and on and on and on. This poor countryman, he says, that wasn't an owl, was it? I've heard everything up here, lived here all my life. That wasn't an owl. I go, no, it wasn't. Because who are you guys? So we told him, we ruined his life. He'll never be the same. But what is it, Jane's calling it, the owl monkey type thing, And the vocalizations went on a few more times. It's interesting. But so of an embarrassing note, last morning we were there. There's an outhouse in this campsite off the river, so I go up to use it. No one, people were parking in the woods. It's pretty bad, but I'm like, went up there, sitting down, doing my business. And what's interesting is the door is, I think it's probably a typical steel door they've got on this outside poopy house. But all the light around the frame blocks out. Something pushes on the door while I'm in there. So whatever was outside the door had to be taller than the door and wider than the steel door because it blocked out all the light. So I'm like, I don't think any of my river party would mess with me because I'm armed to the teeth 24/7, but maybe. So I went down and I saw my son. I said, Did you send somebody up there to do some shenanigans to me while I was up in the outhouse? He goes, no, nobody left the camp. I'm like, okay, interesting. Oh, keep them Ouija boards away from me there, Derek. Stay away from that stuff. I've helped families and people that have messed with that. Don't do it. Burn it. And I think, Alex Hearn, I don't know if I'm being too personal, but I do believe Alex Hearn was taken up at one time or another. And it's unfortunate that once they mark you out and whatever they're doing with you, you become a project to them. It's unfortunate. God bless you. I miss him dearly, Alex. In the fog that Chief Dan saw, it's impossible. It's pushing 100 degrees and about maybe 12% humidity that day. Impossible. I see Christopher Erickson, you're talking about your convinced vortexes are behind the missing 911 cases. I think we've got 50 different things working, maybe more than that, in the people and their disappearances and so forth. There's a lot of things that work all the time. We can't put an umbrella description. Everybody early on, because David wrote the Hooper Project and Travel Bigfoot and so forth, that, they're, oh, and he wrote these books, so Bigfoot's taking all the people out of the forest and stuff. 50 different things going on there. From the smiley face killers on down to pedophiles on down to, it gets deep and dark what's going on in our national forests, and the folks that are probably complacent and compliant and cooperative to the things that are coming in and snapping people up. It's unfortunate. Hello, Anthony Sanchez. Hope you're feeling better, brother. Jan and I did not go up to Skinwalker Ranch. We were at Boogeyman Land, Ron's place up near Canada in the North Woods. Christopher Oaks, and that's the thing. It just sounds like you were in some sort of place where time overlaps the present with the past. I don't know. I think Alex and I were getting to scenes before they were ready. They weren't in place yet. We were just a click off of what was supposed to be happening, but we're just arriving before the scene was ready, and that kept happening again and again. That's the only way I can explain it. Wendy, you need to talk to Jen about that stick figure that you saw. I think you need to talk to her about that. That's something she has some knowledge about. Lauren Preo, I've been talking with Jody Cook. I'm probably going to be involved in his next video. Actually, I've asked to be because we've gone into some at-length discussions about the land between the lakes, and I think this is knowledge, and other folks have talked to me that he shared this on some programs. Is he ran into a former law enforcement officer who was there in the LBL when that family got slaughtered and the horrible, horrific things that happened. He said he was there. He swore in a Bible, showed Jody his badge. Jody's former law enforcement. He knows the guy's real. So, I mean, he wouldn't go on camera, obviously. But land between the lakes is a freaky, deaky, dicey thing down there. Number one, if they catch you with firearms, they're probably going to arrest you and or seize your firearms. And there's no firearms allowed in land between the lakes. Real convenient for all the predators down there. So it's a dicey thing. But there's a lot of activity there. And I don't know what it is. And there's a lot of bad blood there, too. You know, a lot of, you go back, and it's unfortunate, you know, John L. Johnson did so much research in the area, and now he's just, you know, he's not really following up on any of it. But he did some deep, dark research, and there's a lot of bad blood of all the families that had to move out of the flooding areas and relocate, and the graves they had to move in cemeteries and so forth. You know, there's just a lot of bad blood from a lot of old families that had been down there for many years that had to up and leave their homesteads so they could make this great big sportsman's paradise to generate electricity or whatever. There's a lot going on. The Beast of Seven Shoots, that is definitely something with a snout. I don't know what it is. Upright walking canid, we would assume because of the snout, but I don't know what it is. But definitely not natural. Oh yeah, J.R. Knoll, the Lakewood lichen. It was interesting too. I just happened to be in Lakewood at the time, and Lon Strickler's like, "Hey, you know anybody in Denver Lakewood area?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm here." So good. This guy needs to talk to somebody now. And I met the guy over coffee, and then we did this, that, and otherwise, and got to sketches and everything, but didn't want any attention. Didn't just wanted folks to know what he saw. And this is Lakewood is a good part of Lakewood is upper suburbia. There's some really nice semi-mansions, townhomes. I mean, it's some high dollar stuff going on. But what we have there is all through Denver, you've got green belts going through the city off to the foothills. Green belts off to the foothills. So you've got your hiking trails, and you know, even downtown Denver, you can get on a green belt and make your way to the foothills, essentially. So they've pretty well wiped out any kind of predator around that area. I think most of the bears are gone and everything else. So I mean, it leaves something wide open for a super predator to come in. And this is a situation too also, I guarantee you locally, some of the local parks and so forth in that area, I guarantee you all the homeless people are gone. They've disappeared. That's the first and easiest meal. So they're gone. I guarantee you that. But you know, they've left something wide open for a super predator. And you know what this guy saw freaked him out, because you know it came by on all fours and then it stood up and took off, and it looked back at him, and then this great big 10-foot tall fence, it just hopped one arm over and poof, gone. But you know, all in a few seconds. And he hit it with, you know, he had a flashlight because he was out walking this lady's dogs out in the, you know, essentially the backyard. But you know, a dog entity, an upright walking canid. At least in that situation, I could see where we've got a potential for, not that a dogman's a natural thing, it's a genetic manipulation from very long ago, and they're still out there with us. And, they used to be sought after for mercenary purposes back before the advent of modern firearms. And early explorers like Marco Polo and a lot of folks wrote about the doghead people, and they had a society. They had, I think one of the societies was over 150,000 dogmen. And they were excellent silk weavers. They had livestock. They were semi-domesticated themselves, I guess. But they were sought after as mercenaries. So you imagine something with teeth and claws and throwing a spear and shooting a bow and having teeth and claws. I can imagine they were pretty ferocious in battle. But the advent of modern firearms, these things start moving back into the shadows, because the advent of modern firearms is the great equalizer. But they're still out there. Now, they've probably lost most of their culture. At least, at the time, they could live in a city of 150,000 dogheads and have culture and trade and commerce. Once again, let's talk about land between the legs. It's interesting place. It's natty ice, Mark Barquette, our northern neighbor, natty ice. James McFadden, I guess when I quit this video, it'll be archived. You can go back and look. We did discuss some things about Dulce. And it's interesting that Anthony Sanchez is here with us, because that's another Dulce story. Some years back, I got a call from a friend of mine. He says, "Do you want a guide for the governor?" And this is back when Ventura had his conspiracy theories show on. And I said, "Sure." I said, "Where does he want to go?" He says, "He wants to go to Dulce." I said, "Oh, hell no." Not going back there. But I did hook him up with the former chief of police, who was there during the height of the UFO sightings and cattle mutilations and everything else. It wasn't Gabe Valdez. It was, someone else. I won't mention his name. And so he shows up and he signs the 8x10 glossies, and they're hugging and kissing on him, Mr. Ventura. And then they tell him he can't film on the reservation. So that kind of sacked the whole thing. They wanted to do this expose and blah, blah, blah. So they didn't get to film. A week or so later, Anthony Sanchez shows up, and he's got good connections in Dulce, and they brought him right in. They even took him up on Archuleta Mesa. He found some interesting things up on top of the mesa, things that probably don't belong there. But I heard him on, I think, Camelot Radio, and he was in bad shape. And I got all worried about him. He wasn't doing so well. He had run into a neurotoxin in and around his visit up at Dulce. So I finally got it all tracked down. Anthony got it all tracked down. And it didn't happen necessarily up in Dulce, but on a restaurant off of Dulce. I think I know exactly where he went. Middle-aged white guy, balding, brought him his drink for the meal service, and they didn't see this guy for the rest of the meal service. And they backtracked, and they went there and they asked the restaurant about this. They've never had a person like that work there. So that's where they slipped into Mickey. And Anthony went through hell with this neurotoxin. He ended up in Albuquerque and about killed him. I'll tell you that. That's public knowledge. Another thing too is when we did the Dulce conference in 2009, the hotel there in Dulce was standing room only, and people were lined up out into the parking lot. So the tribe let us use their conference center, and that was still standing room only. And I helped Norio Hayakawa move his audio equipment into his Jeep, and we were going to head over there. Thank God I didn't touch the driver's side door, because that's where they told me they probably put the neurotoxin. And Norio Hayakawa, after that conference, was on his back for 6 months. About killed him too. So messing around up there, they're gonna slip you a Mickey or put something nasty on your door handle. They're gonna get you some way. So I really don't know what's going on up there. And once again, it might just be a cover for an underground nuclear waste storage facility. That's when he got sick, Ann. That's when he got sick. I mean, the headaches continued. I mean, he almost died. Almost died. And the thing is, they couldn't diagnose the neurotoxin that he'd come in contact with. Bill Malone, the small primate in the video from Russia, is a monkey. And the hand that you see with the black fingernails, that's a human hand, and the guy's holding it, and they're whatever. It's terrible. It's terrible. Poor monkey. I bet when they ripped all that glue and stuff off that dude, I bet he was pissed. Poor little monkey. God bless him. Yeah, Sasquatch are flesh and blood creatures, but they have abilities that we don't have, that I can't explain. And I'll tell you, from the DNA study, the progenitor of the species, there's nothing in GenBank. Nothing. Everything that walks, crawls, slimes, breathes on this planet is in GenBank. There was nothing from the progenitor of the species in GenBank. This weird, weird DNA. So going back to the Denisovan and or Neanderthal or whatever, I mean, your ancient classifications of humans, there's nothing like it in GenBank. Yeah, we have been back to Blue Ridge. Lori Trail, we've been back to Blue Ridge quite a few times. Back to Alex Hearn went back there with me. It was interesting, but you know, it's unfortunate that the Blue Ridge area up on the Mogollon Rim's gotten popular, and it's unfortunate that our stuff that we did, God, 17 years ago, how popularized there is a word, because people start talking, oh, we need to go up there, blah blah blah, and I think we were up there in 2012 or 13. I can't remember. It's about 3 or 4 years ago, but I've never seen so many kayakers and canoes up there. It's just nuts. nuts. Jaron, going to the giant of Kandahar. I'm giving credence to that. I really am. And L.I. Marzulli did. The guy he talked to sounded like he knew his poop, really did. And then, other situations and other folks collaborating that something really heinous happened. There was a very, very large person, shoot him in the face. And that's it. And the guy, his sandal, the dude's sandal, huge, huge. And typically had turned to cannibalism because, they roughed up the folks in that area because, they had that patrol missing. And they said it was the giant, it was the giant, it was the giant, and it was. Lorena, Joe wants to know if chemtrails are weather controlled or people controlled. I will tell you this, and here's what we know, is they've got nanoparticles going on in there. We've got barium and aluminum loaded, and they're dumping that crap on us. Now, it's slowed down with this new administration. I've signed petitions to have them look into it. Essentially, I don't know what they're doing, why they're doing it, if they're trying to reflect the sun back into outer space, because global warming is a farce. Climate change is a farce as far as them wanting to get carbon taxes from us and so forth. It's the biggest farce pulled off on us in this 21st century, if you will. It's bogus. It's bogus. There's actually been a 15-year cooling trend. So, barium, aluminum is hell on our systems to breathe in. The barium and aluminum, barium kills your immune system. The aluminum builds up back in your medulla oblongata, and that, along with fluoride and aluminum, kill your goodies back there. Not good. A lot of folks say, too, they're putting all that out in the atmosphere so HAARP can work. I don't know. I'm speaking from first-hand experience that we have watched them turn their smokers on and turn them off. Turn them on, turn them off. We watched them do test grids and test patterns over the Four Corners area and make checkerboard patterns day after day after day after day. And a lot of folks get sick. Hey, JC, how you doing? Love the investigation you did on my wife-in-law's place at Nananizad, sheep killings at the Dodge place. Yeah. That was interesting. If I recall, we left some game cameras up there and some weird stuff like little fairy dudes showed up on the game cameras. No weird stuff on that, and other than like the little fairy dude. If that's the one, let's get together and talk about that, Brainerd. I've probably got some stuff I could give you and share with you privately. Oh, you know what? Now I know exactly. That was the bloodless carnage at Sheep Pen. Yeah. That was interesting too, because we had horseshoe-shaped prints that start in one spot on a little rise above the sheep pen. and they go down to the corral, and that's it. It's like whatever did this just materialized or came in on wings and did all this horrible carnage. And it's a bloodsucker, or at least part of its effigy is enjoying the blood, because the big plywood outside the sheep pen, this thing ran its claws down it, slowly, methodically, to get the sheep running. And it being enjoying the blood, it wants to get the endorphins worked up. And that's what the bloodsuckers do. So this thing got the sheep all worked up before it went to work on them. Nasty stuff. That's a video you can see on our J.C. Johnson YouTube channel, Bloodless Carnage at Sheep Pen. Pretty nasty stuff. Poor sheep, poor ram. That poor ram, that was a big ram. So essentially, we had run into several more situations where folks were talking about horseshoe-shaped prints, but a winged creature involved with it. That it would land and leave the horseshoe-shaped prints and take a few steps and then take off again. I don't know what it is. The Jersey Devil supposedly has either cloven hooves or horseshoe-shaped prints. So. Hello, Brent Hansen up here in Fargo. Great guy, great range instructor, great concealed carry instructor. Good to see you. Just thought I'd have a few beers with folks that have been wanting to ask me some questions, and I've been away for a couple of years, and a lot of folks haven't had a chance to get in touch with me. So. It's really interesting too. Apparently, we've had a lot of famous people go down to Antarctica. We need to go back to Robert Byrd in his memoirs, what he talks about. And if we can believe the memoirs, I don't know, because the memoirs are published after his death. But he flies into a valley that's green, temperate in Antarctica, and he's describing a woolly mammoth. And he's talking, what he is talking about publicly, even from shows from the 1950s that were on television, is some of the peaks in Antarctica, not ice, okay? Some of the peaks, the mountain ranges, are up around 14,000, 15,000 feet that he flew over. So there's a huge landmass down there. Hello, Chief Dan. Leonard Dan's here. Jack Harry has probably looked a lot further into the Antarctica situation. I guess Al Gore went down there. I'm told the Pope went down there. Something going on. Once again, this is going back before the flood. And your war in heaven, if you're so inclined, your war in heaven was not swords and bucklers and shields and angel wings and whoa, spaceships. That kind of warfare. That's what was going on. It was an actual war in the heavens. And a third of heaven is down here with us presently, the ones who rebelled. And we read in the book of Enoch how the watchers descended on Mount Hermon. I think they kind of like crash landed their craft on Mount Hermon and came down to be amongst us. Hey, you guys got any Cheerios and steaks? And we're kind of hungry. And we just crashed and stuff with them. They have the technology and they still have it. And they're still here with us and they're still using it. So behind the scenes, if you will. And we've looked into a lot of situations, folks who've gone up into these craft with these entities, and they're not here to cure cancer. They're not here to help us. One of the interesting things too, also, I'm involved in the antiquity study. I'm really interesting piece of archaeology that we're studying, looking into. And the study group, we had doctors and PhDs and anthropologists and everything else. And one of the guys in the group pulls out his NSA ID. He says, I just want you guys to know, we've all been talking and phone conversating, and just want you to know my job. I work for the NSA. But they don't know anything about what we're doing here with this antiquity study. Like, okay, cool, good, good. So we're getting around doing the roundtable letter. So what exactly do you do with the NSA? He says, well, the department I work with is in research and development type thing, and we build these power cells. And once a month, the Anunnaki touch down at Edwards Air Force Base and pick up these power cells. And our jaws hit the floor. The Anunnaki are real, according to this guy. And he checks out. So the Anunnaki are out there. I don't think they have our best interests in mind, and I think in the end they're probably a product of genetic manipulation also. Way back. I mean, they're a pet. They're a pet to someone protecting them. And that's another thing too. Even reading into the Book of Giants, the genetic manipulations that they did, the offspring, even though they were essentially a chimera with, I wouldn't say human, but angelic properties and animal properties, they still looked upon them as like a, part of them. I think they probably were a lot more affectionate to the human hybrids that they mixed up and made. But those mixed up human hybrids came into power and ruled over us tiny little people for a very long time before the flood. Jack Carey's working with Gaia, G-A-I. They've got their own channel right now, and they've got, I guess, well over 100 programs on there. And Jack Carey's been working with them. And, where I get off into the crossroads with a lot of these things, and even my dear friends, I'm great friends with David Hatcher Childress and some other folks involved with the ancient aliens, but I mean, I really see an agenda being pressed and placed where they're probably doing a replacement theory that we were seeded here by aliens and so forth, that kind of narrative. And that's, where I step across the line and go, no, I'm not with you on that. I mean, they would love us to think that. They really would. But that's not what happened. And that's not why we're here. Hello, David Fritz. I'm just reading all these questions. Hold on. Jerno, once again. Nibiru, I don't know. I don't know. We're seeing a lot of potential planetary things going on behind the sun, things we can't explain. I don't know. And once again, the Anunnaki. And we're going to bring up the Anunnaki again. And I think we need to check Zachariah Stitchin's homework because he's the one who deciphered the stones and so forth. We're going back and he needs his homework checked, and we're checking it. And I've got friends checking his homework. He's kind of built an agenda and a narrative around these stones that isn't entirely so. But what I want you to do take away from the Sumerian text is the genetic manipulation was real, was going on, did happen. And, you know, essentially the Watchers and their kind were doing that. And that was going on. That was rampant at one time in our human history, unfortunately. But Zachariah Stitchin, we're checking your homework, buddy. You've been a naughty boy. It's okay. Well, this thing, you know, we're talking about the fallen angels once again, the Watchers. Here's an interesting story from the book of Enoch. This is when Enoch is already translated out. He walked 365 years with the Lord religiously. And one day God says, you know what? We're closer to my house than your house. Why don't you come home with me? And he did. So he's translated out. He doesn't have to know death. And he passes in between the portals and whatever, you know, Enoch, in his writings, this is primitive understanding of probably some really modern things that we would have a better grasp on than this man from thousands of years ago would have a grasp on, you know, what's going on with what he's seeing. But Enoch's the man behind the scenes. He wants to see everything. God's like, yeah, I'll show you. I'll show you how I do this. I'll show you how I do that. And we've got a very primitive mindset, technology-wise. The guy's obviously a very intelligent human being, but technology-wise, very primitive, trying to explain the things that he's seen that would probably make more sense to us in this day and age. But, you know, back then, it makes sense, you know. We would say, oh, that's a laser cutting through the ice or whatever, you know. And he's like, the flame of fire passes through the ice or whatever. We would describe it a different way than Enoch does. But he's the man behind the scenes, and he gets to see all this stuff that's going on. So he's translated out, and he can come and go as he pleases. And Methuselah, his son, and Methuselah is son of Enoch. Methuselah's son, Lamech, comes to him. He says, you know, my wife had this baby, and when he opens his eyes, the room lights up. He's got white hair and pale skin. So I think there's some angelic loving been going on here. I just want to find out. Can you find out for me? So Methuselah tells Lamech, I'll go find out. And he finds Enoch. And Enoch goes up and has a conversation and comes back and says, you know what? Raise him as your own. Doesn't necessarily tell Lamech that it's, you know, tell Methuselah, tell Lamech that it's son. Says, raise him as your own. He has a very special job to do. You know what this baby's name was? Noah. So we've got a fresh DNA transfusion with Noah. Remember, he was perfect in his generations. Whatever went on the ark had to be perfect because this whole earth was corrupted. Because when Enoch initially went up to petition on behalf of the Watchers, they were going to cease and desist and stop their organized crime organization down there and enslaving us and eating us and everything else. He comes back with some really bad news. So in the end, when the Watchers get the really bad news from Enoch, they set out to destroy all of creation. So that's why we've got them mixing DNA with donkeys and cattle and all this other stuff. They wanted to screw up all of creation. And I was talking about this with my brother today because we're looking back in 1909. G.E. Kincaid is essentially doing a solo trip down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon, which that guy's got huevos of steel to be doing the solo trip on the Colorado in 1909. But he's headhunting for the Smithsonian. He's looking for old Spanish gold mines down there, and he finds a situation where we've got tailings coming down. So with great difficulty, he climbs up, and then he runs into a staircase. So obviously the water level before the staircase must have been a lot higher at one time. So he climbs up to the staircase and essentially walks into a facility. And it's like spokes inside a wheel, tunnels, but huge. He finds a dining hall. Right at the entryway, he sees a Buddha-type statue, Egyptian sarcophaguses and mummies. And I mean, it looks like a multicultural center going on in the, thousands of years old in the Grand Canyon. I guess the Knights of the Grand Council and Smithsonian eventually built a tramway up to the mouth of that facility, and they hauled off everything, floated it down the river, hid it somewhere. They've well dumped over probably 3,000 13 to 16 to 20 foot tall skeletons in the ocean over the years. The Smithsonian is the original CIA. If it doesn't fit the agenda or the narrative that they want, they'll get rid of it. So having giants among us is so biblical. It's so biblical. Can't have that now, can we? It's in the Bible. Can't have that biblical giant thing. Anyway, we were there just trying to, in the general area near the Hopi Sipapu, where the Hopi came out to the fourth world. They rebelled against the god, the underworld Masa. And it's very interesting. All in this area, within about 50 square miles, all this is going on. I don't think G.E. Kincaid saw a multicultural center. I think when he walked through the opening, he probably saw an Anunnaki art collection, and the Anunnaki were indeed the slave masters of, unfortunately, the Hopi peoples. Like I said, they rebelled against the Masa and were given their freedom to the fourth world. So it goes very deep and dark, but it goes back to the old masters of us. And the old masters are back at it again in full swing. They have been, quietly, incrementally, and they're back at it now. They want to enslave us again. At least 550 million of us useless eaters. They're working on that program again. They're after it. Well, anyway, guys, I'm going to head out. I wanted to try this out. Just answer some questions because I get so many PMs. But I hope I knocked out a bunch of stuff that you guys had questions about and anything like that. But I'll probably do this. This went really well. Nobody told me to go to hell or anything, so that's good. I think this went very well, and we'll probably pop on and do this, well, at least probably every other week. And we'll be getting some new videos out with some new stuff, some new cool stuff. I know a lot of you folks are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Keep checking in there, and I'll share here when stuff is coming up. But everyone have a good night. God bless you, and thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate you. Love you all.